Hi, everybody. We're here today with Bex Urban, who's one of my closest allies here in California. She's an intuitive genius, a Pilates master, a yoga teacher extraordinaire. She hosts yoga retreats that fill my joy and my soul. And I wanted to bring her on to share some of her wisdom.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming on, Bex.
Bex is all chill because she's literally chilled because she just cold plunged for not some people do it for 3 minutes, but she did it for 28 minutes in the Bay Area, which is flippin' freezing.
It was actually so beautiful. I was there was a handful of women, and the sun was coming up. There was mist over the mountains. The sun was hitting the church just beautifully, and we were all just, dipping and soaking and being grateful, watching the boats go by.
Where do you guys do it? Outside of Tiburon?
No, near Sausalito. There's like a little beach, and it's easy to access. And so I'm a little shaky, a little chilly. I This morning I rose early. I actually did practice yoga before for about 40 minutes, and then I went in, and it's that time where it's nice and quiet, and for me it helps reset the day. It's like even in the morning sometimes you can feel residual from the day before where you're a little bit drawn down, and so it does feel like you're expanding yourself into clearing. At least that's how it feels like for me. A deeper than a shower or a bath.
So this is all about we speak a lot with our patients or people in medicine. It's just said all the time like, well, drop into your intuition or use your intuition or let your intuition guide you. And there's just these messages for people, women, and I feel like that can be a really hard message to interpret. Like, what does that mean? And if somebody's making a decision or being led in a way, especially medically, if we're working with fertility patients about doing IVF or not doing IVF or finding the right IVF clinic, or for older women, like, do I, yes, start to take hormones like my doctor wants me to, or do this next procedure or start to cold plunge. So the and I find that women sometimes mo and I think even more than men do a lot of mind vacillation. Should I do this? Should I do that? We're told a lot of times to make lists and make a list and the pro and the cons and look at the list. And I feel like I've been trained in the anti-intuitive way of making decisions. And so it's the trusting the intuition and process. So I just wanted you to speak into that a little bit.
It's so interesting that you're asking, because I was saying to Kara that like there are so many ways that we can tune in, and yet it's sort of like a radio. I've never thought about it like that, but it's just coming for me right now is that there's going to be all these different places where you can find what you want. And usually they're all going to tell you the same thing. So for me, the easiest tool, the cheapest tool is to write, to literally put a pen in my hand and ask myself, what do I most need to know today? And not correct myself and just like brain dump it. Much like Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, just like taking time to write for yourself, not to write so that I'm going to present something to you guys that's going to like inspire you, but just to write to move the energy. And I think that, like you're saying, of your pro and your con list, not even writing for the pro and the con list, just writing it out. And then in your inner counsel, you're finding these ways where things show up for you. And then you can seek others to give you guidance and advice who have so much more knowledge than you. And yet, your inner compass, if you do spend time writing, that helps you so much. So I find that, so many people are like, oh, I don't want to train for something. I can't meditate. All the reasons why things can't work. And so simple tools like writing, walking, okay, I'm going to take a couple minutes and breathe. They might help fine tune what ways we want to make bigger decisions in our lives. And they might help us get back into that quiet space where we can listen more. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like, I really find we need practices to support us. And I'm someone who loves learning. So, like, I'll enroll in lots of classes. And yet, it's so essential to keep coming back to what's true for me and to also say, hey, Kara, tell me what you think would be a good protocol if I'm feeling blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So that's sort of how I fine tune those spaces where I'm curious and I want to know more and I want my healing to be a co-creative process.
Hillary's power just went out, so there's some reason why we get to dive deeper on this together, I'm sure. I love that before we went live, you and I were just chit-chatting about, the things you do and the things you lead as far as working with clients these days and what you found after, the almost 20 years of doing this. And you mentioned a stillness practice, and it just made, right? And it just made sense to me as that is sort of the antidote to the busy mind that's scattered and flying in different directions and can't make a proper decision and tap into their intuition. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit and what that means and how you lead people into it.
Into a stillness practice, how do
Mhm.
I inspire people for that?
Well, I just think it doesn't it's not culturally accepted, right? We're a go 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 culture. So I just wanna it's just not something that's on our daily routine, and I think it's so important, and so I wanted you to talk more about that.
So what I have to say, oh my God, my dog, hold on. This is me moving because otherwise you're gonna hear my dog get really loud. Here, go ahead, Blue. This is real life. This is how we practice.
Yeah.
So for me, a stillness practice is so essential because I love to move.
Mm.
And so I think we forget that in the foundation of who we are, right? Quiet it yields such a huge benefit. So for me, because I'm a mover and I love to move, I know that the polarity, the duality, these places in between, we have to have a foundation. So something I always say for people, this is my most basic one, and it always works, is I do that mantra and mudra of peace begins with me. And so maybe I'll do like 10 rounds of that if I can't take the time to sit and meditate. And yet I always tell my clients, like, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, you're not telling yourself the true story. Because I know on my phone, it will log how long I've scrolled or looked into something. And it's definitely more than 5 minutes.
Mhm.
So it's a matter of carving out that time and saying, I matter enough that 5 minutes is going to help provide me with something. And doing nothing is doing something. It is. It just is. And in that quiet space, if I'm shaky, if I'm uncomfortable, I learn something there too. Right? What did Rumi say? What you seek is seeking you. So I think there's so much merit. And if it's look, you don't understand. I can't sit still. Then go for a walk for 5 minutes without something in your ears, something in your hand. Just walk and see if you feel better. And if you really don't feel better, then maybe you need 7 minutes. I mean, I'm not saying more is better. I know for me, if I put that pen in my hand and I have a blank piece of paper and I just give myself a little bit of time, I get to unfold something without an expectation.
Do you have a prompt for that if somebody's going to try this?
For sitting or
The writing.
for the writing, oh, what do I most need to know? Or what do I need to release? Or sometimes when I'm writing, what's agitating me? What's calling my attention? Um, what's frustrating me? Why am I in my own way? Like all the things. How come I can't hear my inner cheerleader and I hear my inner critic? Why would I turn to my friend and tell them all the ways they're amazing, and then I turn to myself and find all the ways that I'm not succeeding? Um, all the again, it's that the quieter we become, the more we hear. And it is ultimately this space inside ourselves where deep listening is such a healing practice. Oh, I've been so harsh to myself today. Isn't that interesting? Why would I do that? If Hillary called me and said, "I'm struggling. I'm having a hard day," I certainly wouldn't be like, "Well, you should be struggling. You got crap all over your house. You've got this going on," right? Like that's where
Calling you out on that.
what'd you say?
Are you calling her out on piles of things?
No,
Wait, what? I don't have any piles of
I'm
things.
looking at piles behind me. No, I'm just saying, like, something I say when I'm teaching yoga is if your inner dialogue to yourself is unkind, right? And maybe it's not even true. It's definitely not necessary. The thing that right aligns me is imagining, particularly in yoga practice, if someone could overhear my inner dialogue and it was unkind and it was unnecessary and it was untrue, would they go out for coffee with me afterwards? And that kind of quiets my mind. At least it reroutes it. And that's what I'm interested in right now is, I've been on this planet 50 years. If I lived another 50 years in this form, it would be amazing. So how do as one of my teachers, David White, who's a poet, says, as we become younger toward death, toward leaving our form, not in a like real morose, like terrible way, how will I choose to make these days fill me and all those around me with an illuminated, expansive way of being? And I don't know the answer. And so I just have to keep just like living into that question, right? All the poets before us, all the wisdom seekers, they all said, stay curious, live in awe. And that's what my practice is pretty much right now.
I was laughing because I was like so wanting to be in the intuition and then my power went out. Kara and I have had two really funny timed power outages in the last 2 days. So it's funny. It's like, what's the message? But anyway, I'm back on my phone. And I love for all of us, the stillness versus the busyness, and also the self-talk, right? That if we're coming down to loving ourselves, it's so much easier to be loving. And I've just done a workshop and they said, give what you want to receive. Like so often in life, we, if we want more love or we want more attention, we demand it in a way that's sometimes not the in love. But if you give out in the world what you want to receive, it creates an energetic flow. So I think that all these things are ways you're speaking about all these things as ways to tap into our intuition, right? And
Mhm.
intuition being self alignment with self so that we can hear the clear message and not just the negative talk, right?
Well, and also I was saying to Kara before that, like, it's it's that loving awareness that there's really a stream of consciousness, and it's probably one consciousness, and if you're quiet enough, whatever you wanna call it, Buddha, the divine, Mother Nature, the universe, God, Jesus, Allah, whatever it is, right? If that's what your foundation is, or that's what your frequency is that you want to tap into, if we all were really coming from that place, it's just love, it's just peace, right? I mean, and that's what you would wish for yourself and for others, is to be in a state of being peaceful, being loving. And I think what gets illuminated, expanded, highlighted is that we kind of turn away and we block blessings that we have that we could turn toward, that would give us permission to acknowledge all the ways things are aligned for us as opposed to misaligned,
So the
right?
basic concept of a gratitude journal.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And there are things that you are, that's exactly it, Kara. There are ways that life is working for you all the time,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And it's super easy to forget instead of being willing to remember, okay, I'm here for a reason. There is some unique ability and way that my one of one has to share with everyone. Right, and in my journaling, I rarely reread it, um, but sometimes I'll find if I pay attention, things that I've written about in the morning, they show up in the day,
Mhm.
right? And so what is that, right? If I'm writing about, "Oh," and this came up for me last week, I'm not special, and yet there's only one of me. So what is true about that statement, right? I'm not special, but there's only one of me. And that's true for every human, right? You're a unique, incomparable of creation of something. So when you get down on yourself and you remember you have all these special ways that only you can bring whatever you're going to bring to the table or to the nature walk or to your friend that you're taking to coffee. Like, how can you just acknowledge that and celebrate that? And I think that's what's so cool about being human is if you can be in a moment where you appreciate all your surroundings, and just like you're saying, you have that gratitude journal or that gratitude practice, or you have a 1, 2, 3. And when I say 1, 2, 3, I mean you think 3 things that you're grateful for. Okay, I'm still here. Okay, I have the faculties to move my body, right? Okay, most everything that I need, like basic needs, are provided for me. And I bring this home all the time to my kids. when the weather changes and it's pouring and raining outside, I'm like, we have a house, we're in a home. Like, don't forget these things. And so I do think it has to do sharpening your intuition or your ability to know what you know and know what you don't know is really about that remembering. Right. And for me, in all my studies, in all my practices, the biggest awakening is this is a body that we're in. But if you've ever seen a body that has no heartbeat, you know that we have to be more than this. We have to.
And that, as we were discussing, every system that you've studied for meditation, which you've gone deep into kinds of meditation I've never heard of. You're always using these words I could never spell. It's like, I have no idea. But all those techniques that you're studying and from all those systems all over the world ultimately come down to one thing, that there's this energetic being and this actual essence of us, however you want to call it, chi, you want to call it prana, whatever it is that we're dealing with here, that our Western medical system just completely ignores. So that's one of our biggest challenges, Hillary and I, in working in medicine these days, is that we see this thing of we can do all the right things, the diet, the exercise, we can check off all that whole list. But if the mindset and that spirit essence, the way, the vibe of the person, if you want to say, and you all will know this, you go in a room and you sit next to someone in a waiting room and they have this, like, I don't know, you're like, I don't want to sit next to this person. That is their energy. That's a real thing. You meet someone at a cocktail party and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to go the other way. Everyone has that experience, right? You meet your dentist. You're like, no, that's not the dentist for me. You're like, you want to run? Like, that's the intuition, that thing that we tap down because maybe it's not polite to leave the dentist because you have this bad feeling or whatever it is, or the doctor appointment, or your friend introduced you to someone and you're supposed to love this person because they love them, but you're like, I don't get this. Like, listen to the I don't get this, because ultimately, we're all around the same age. We can all recount all those times where we look back and we're like, I had that feeling. And for some reason, I just was like, oh, I just went with what my brain told me and not what my gut told me or what my essence told me. So that brings us to that point of every system of medicine recognizes this, that's ancient. Every text I've ever looked at, everything, and every meditation practice you're talking about is like how to get in there and alter it and bring it up.
You really hit it perfectly in that central point of your gut, your enteric, now they call it, right? You're knowing, the fact that your brain and that system are so spiraled, aligned, linked, however you want to call it. When you're little, right? And you say to a child, hey, do you want to do this? And they're like, yes, I'm so excited. I have butterflies, right? And you say to that same child, hey, do you want to do this? Ooh, I have a pit. Things don't feel settled there. Okay. That's the language of youth. That's the compass. That's the intuition. And when a little child says it and they say they have butterflies, most of us extract, okay, this is excitement. Or maybe you're nervous, right? Or maybe this worry shows up this way. However, when they say they have a pit, nobody goes, oh, let's push beyond it, right? We say, okay, let's look at why you're uncomfortable. And then we age and we block that blessing that guides us and says, that person seems great, but they're not for me. And it's unpopular to do those things and be in that way. And yet it's basically like your GPS is saying, turn right, and you're turning left, and it's like reroute. And you're just like, No, no, no. I'm going to go this way. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get in my car. There are like 2 to 3 ways I can leave my house. I pretty much leave the same way. But occasionally I'll have an inner dialogue that's like, hey, Bex, what if you went the longest route today? What would happen? I don't know. Right? But why would that thought come? So I think what you're saying, Kara, is so yields such a merit. We slow down when we unhurry. We're not less productive. We're actually in a space of grace. And it will all get done. It just might not get done with such speed. And something we forget is we're human beings. And so much of our life is human doing. And this is what the productivity, the efficiency has gotten in the way of being in service to the quiet. As you can hear my dog just like going off because the garbage people are outside.
I'm like, Blue.
I told you that's why I'm upstairs, because if I was downstairs and even if I had my AirPods on, and it's like he thinks
It's just so perfect because you are in such a peaceful mode. And then it just so illuminates these interruptions that come in, and that it's so easy to just be like, stop it. But instead you're like just calmly going with it. And it is such a beautiful way of just showing that life is going to constantly happen.
That's right.
And like we are constantly challenged to get to just stay in our connection, in the unity of our self, as all the noise keeps showing up, right? The power goes off, the dog's barking, and you're like, okay. And I get to just keep trying to align and realign and realign and realign.
And that's it, Hillary. Like, and that's the same for whatever your journey looks like, whether it's with fertility, whether it's with cancer, whatever it is. Like, these obstacles and these hindrances are all a path, right? And we all have no idea what gifts unwrap in different forms. And just to, again, quote a beautiful poet, Mary Oliver said, someone once gave me a box of darkness. It took me years to unpack it and realize that it was a gift. That's not exactly how she said it, but you get what I'm saying. We can't know, anything more than this moment. And that's the practice. We can, however, stay committed to ourselves so we don't abandon ourselves. And when something doesn't feel aligned, we can say, this doesn't work for me. And I think this is the practice in life. Find the ways that you can highlight and live in a way that feels like there is love and there is peace inside yourself. And that's wisdom.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. And if you guys have never done a meditation or yoga with Bex, then she's got her website listed right there. She's got tons. She's online. You can find her, and if you're in the Bay Area, you can work with her. You go to her classes in Larkspur or San Rafael, and if you're not, you can meet her online.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and get free classes, and then yoga anytime, Pilates anytime, insight timer. I've got retreats in the fall. But more than anything, just write and free yourself from the ways that are not supporting you. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Bex.
So good. Love you, sweetie.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too. Mwah.